Today on P.O.'s Video Lab, I built my first computer from scratch.
We're gonna get this thing built and it's gonna be awesome.
There's a certain part of me that just got really excited about it.
I've pretty much got it figured out how it goes together before they even have a clue about what's going on.
Will my efforts bring success, or will I crumble under the pressure?
A computer is just like putting together a Lego set, but there's a lot of electronics and messing up's a lot more expensive.
At that point, I realized we were probably in trouble.
3 guys trying to put a computer together on a Saturday. How hard could it be? Hello and welcome. Today I will be building a custom computer, and to help me is my friend Andrew. Let's go over the parts we'll need. First, we'll need a motherboard, and for that we'll be using the EVGA Z270 Classified K motherboard. We'll be using the GeForce GTX 1060 MSI GPU. We got a 650 watt power supply here from Seasonic. Gotta have some RAM, and for that we'll be using this G-Skill 16 gigabyte DDR4 single stick of RAM. For our processor, we'll be using the Intel i7 7700K processor. We'll need an operating system, and for that we'll be using Windows 10, and we're gonna be sticking it on this 500 gigabyte SSD drive from Samsung. And gotta keep that CPU cooled, so we will be using the NH-U12S Noctua CPU cooler. And we've got a refurbished Asus monitor here. And let's go ahead and show them the case here. We'll be sticking all this in here. This is the Corsair Obsidian Series 750D case right here. It's designed with airflow in mind, so that was something that was kind of important since we're going to be sticking a 7700K processor in here. Going to be generating probably a lot of heat, so that's why I went ahead and got this just for the airflow here, so thank you, that's good. I really want to make this thing stand out as far as the length of it goes, like not something that's going to be old in a couple of years. I really wanted it to last, kind of like my iMac, but I just kind of wanted something that I could upgrade down the road without any kind of problems or anything like that. And for the keyboard, just went with something I got pretty cheap at Best Buy, 20 bucks for a wireless mouse and keyboard. And I think that's pretty much everything we'll need right here. Let's go ahead and get started with the build. Pull out the instructions. Okay,
Can you hand me the scissors over there?
yeah.
With the parts all out, I thought the best place to start would be the CPU fan. That way, with it already assembled, it would be easier to attach to the motherboard.
So let's see here. Okay, did they give us 2 instruction manuals or something? Cause wait, hold on. Oh, I think this one's for another
Form factor?
yeah, kinda. That's this maybe because this one's the one I have, so we'll go with that one. Let's just go from step 1. First, screw the MIBT 2 bolts into the screw threads of the LGA 2011 socket frame. So
This needs to go on in the case. No, this is not on into the case.
we had a set of instructions to look at while assembling the CPU fan, but for one reason or another, we couldn't make the actual CPU fan look like the pictures in the instructions.
It's always important to read the instructions ahead of time. Now, like most men, I kind of wanted to, but also didn't because I thought I could just figure it out myself.
Wait a second, the socket frame. That maybe they were referring to the motherboard.
Yeah, well, we should probably go and pop the motherboard out.
Andrew and I quickly discovered that we couldn't assemble the CPU fan until we knew how it connected to the motherboard. So we decided to put the CPU fan on hold until we attached the CPU to the motherboard.
Look at her.
Okay, hold on. There's instructions for doing this.
We can go ahead and put the CPU in there.
Unhook the socket lever by pushing down and away from the socket.
Already did.
Okay. Pull the socket lever back and load plate will automatic lift.
Yeah, it's already here. It's just it's talking about this process. About it lifting. Now we would just go ahead and put the processor in.
So we're at the point where we put the CPU in the socket and close the lid. And that's where it got tricky. So, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Is it that way, or do you turn it 180 degrees?
No, this is the right way because the triangles are matching. Like that little golden triangle right there is supposed to match that notch right there. So that's how it goes in.
Oh, okay.
And then this
should go down.
Oh, probably down that.
We're gonna go ahead and close it here. Nope. Is that it?
No, it's doing something wrong here. So we stick the CPU in the socket, we're trying to pull the lever down, and the lever is proving to be more difficult than I assumed.
They're having a hard time with the lever coming down and closing it because it's the first time really doing this. They weren't sure about the tension on it and stuff.
So I take the CPU out of the socket and try and reposition it, and that's where I mess up. Now I've watched videos online on how to install a CPU, and the concept itself doesn't seem too difficult. However, when it came time to actually putting the CPU in the socket, my hands didn't want to cooperate. Yeah, why not? Seriously, just hold it still. I'm going all Gilligan on this CPU here.
And I was watching him put it in, and I was like, boy, your hands are shaking. And he kept dropping it, and I just wanted to call him Mr. Butterfingers. Calling somebody something like that when they're already stressed, really not a good idea.
Oh no. What's that right there?
I don't know, did you bend a pin?
That's what I'm worried about. Bent CPU pins in the socket. Perfect.
They take it out and they get to looking and they think they see a bent pin on it, and Jacob starts freaking out.
I've spent almost $300 on this motherboard with tax and shipping included, and it's gone, down the drain, ruined. However, we had already come this far and we were thinking, hey, let's just go ahead and see if this motherboard is as toast as I think it is.
They end up putting it in there and just closing it and putting it in there, and I'm thinking, it ain't gonna hurt it. Just put that sucker in there, she'll go.
With determination in our hearts, we press on to see this computer up and running. We finally got the CPU installed, and we're trying to figure out how to attach the CPU fan to the motherboard.
Okay, where did you say those other pins went? Where do these go?
Yeah, we need to find out where these go in relation with this, because it's like the first step on here.
Well, I'm not sure where these go. As we kept working through it, I started realizing, oh, I don't think we did this right. See, it looks like it goes into there, into these, but these are already here. And maybe if you have a slightly different one of these bars, because if you notice a bar here doesn't have screws already built on.
And they're like, this has got to go like this, and they're looking at the instructions and they're realizing that the pictures on the instructions and what they're holding aren't the same. And I mean, we're doing this thing a good half an hour or so. And I'm sitting here looking at how everything goes together, and I pretty much got it figured out how it goes together before they even have a clue about what's going on.
At this point in the ball game, 15, 30, 45 minutes have passed, and we still don't have this fan attached. These go in the threads here, so this goes in here. Like that. That's what it means by notice how like that matches that? That's what they're referring to. These have to go in up like that, I'm assuming.
So eventually I go digging through the box and I find this extra set of instructions that they didn't have.
So my brother Lucas must be getting tired of his camera operating duties and goes and looks in the CPU fan box and lo and behold, finds another set of instructions. And it turns out to be the right set of instructions.
Hey, it might help if you have the right instructions. At that point, I realized we were probably in trouble.
With the right instructions in hand, we pressed forward, getting the fan bracket screwed in and applying the thermal paste. From there, it was a simple matter of getting the fan screwed into place. The next piece of hardware to install was the RAM, which wasn't difficult to figure out since the motherboard's instruction booklet told us which slot to fit the single stick of RAM into. At this point in the build, we had everything we needed to get the computer to boot and access the BIOS, with the exception of power. So we got the power supply out and hooked up the motherboard cable.
3, 2, 1.
You can turn that on and, okay, there's power getting to the board. Let's see. Are we supposed to be waiting for beeps? What are we waiting for? It was a very intense moment working with the computer at this point because I just kind of stuck it on some cardboard and I thought, well, let's just try to get it running just enough to see whether the CPU is even functional.
So we've got power hooked up to the motherboard and lights are glowing. However, we don't have anything showing up on the monitor.
C0 through CF stands for OEM BDS initialization code, so it's initializing. Hey, why isn't the...
It just says C.
Why isn't the fan running? Oh, it is running. Oh, it's just quiet.
Yeah, that's how quiet it is.
Does this just mean it's initializing? I'm not entirely sure. We ran it, and some codes came through, and we couldn't figure out what the codes meant. We were freaking out. We're like, what does this code mean? What does C mean? Thankfully, the troubleshooting guy that came with the motherboard actually had a very nice description of what was happening. Actually, our very particular scenario, it said, if you see C and you see some power turning on, oh, well, it's because you need more power to the CPU.
So it turns out we didn't have all the cables hooked up to the power supply properly. I guess the CPU wants power too.
After plugging in a few more cables, the motherboard decided to play ball. With the computer properly booting up, it was time to plug in the keyboard and mouse and take a look at the BIOS.
And they boot into the system, and it's pretty cool looking. I ain't never seen nothing like it. It's like a video game or something. It's really cool, but then they get into it, and Jacob's calming down. He's realizing this is probably going to work and stuff.
It was very interesting getting to the part where we actually got the machine running. It was crazy to see that the BIOS screens now have like a full GUI with a mouse and everything. I'm not really sure how it ended up working or whether we really bent a pin that mattered. That's something I really haven't figured out and probably don't care to.
When the BIOS booted up and the computer saw the CPU and RAM, my anxiety went down a little bit. I still felt we were in the woods, but we were moving closer to being less in the woods.
Before we went any further with the computer build, we decided to go ahead and update the BIOS. I already had the BIOS update file on a thumb drive, so we plugged that in and ran the update. The update went without a hitch, and our next step was to install Windows 10. We pulled out the Samsung SSD and plugged it into the motherboard.
Okay, it doesn't look like it's seeing anything.
Serial ATA, that is port 0. How many of these ports do we have?
Our first boot with the SSD installed couldn't be detected, so we made sure our boot order configuration was good and restarted the system.
Oh, okay, it sees it.
It sees it
in the one port.
Looks like that did the trick. The computer can now see the drive, and we can move on with the Windows 10 installation, which, by the way, couldn't have been any easier. I went with the Windows 10 Pro full retail version, which came on a small thumb drive. I plugged in the thumb drive, and with a few clicks got Windows 10 installed and running.
This is exciting. I was really nervous when the CPU, and I thought I noticed some bent pins.
When we thought the CPU?
I mean, they may be, I don't know. But like, the machine's up and running, so it's one of those, am I really gonna question it if it's working? We'll worry when we start seeing smoke. That's the time to worry, is when you start seeing smoke. And so far, we've not seen any smoke. By the time we got the bare bone components on the computer, it's 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and Andrew has other places he's gotta be. But not before he takes a look at the case.
Extended ATX.
You can see inside of it.
I had a friend in high school who had a case about like this. Where's the feet? These are the feet. Okay.
That's so fancy. Look at them.
Jeez. So the case was pretty huge, but then when he pulled out his graphics card, I thought, oh, well, this is why we have a case like this. This graphics card is massive.
When he showed me the case, it was still in the box and stuff, and I was thinking, man, why would you do that? Why don't you just go get an old junky computer and take everything out and use that case? And then he pulled this case out, and I was like, that's nice. That looks good.
I wanted something that was gonna last, non-offensive to the eyes, and something I could easily upgrade hardware with in the future. This case gets a check on all three.
Before he left, Andrew managed to open the case and install the power supply. And with that, Andrew headed out.
Okay, so Andrew's gone, and after he left, me and my brother went and got Taco Bell, so now we're back, and we've got our minds are filled with food, so now I'm able to continue. So, before we left, we got the power supply installed in here. So, that's already set to go, so what we need to do is just go ahead and get motherboard in here, and just start getting the components together so that way the computer can come together. Oh, there we go. Okay. So So I've got my I/O plate on the back of the case, and it's time to go ahead and add the motherboard into the case. But just like everything else that's going on with this build today, something wasn't adding up. Okay.
I figured the easiest way to get the motherboard in was to remove the fan, so I got to work on that. Well, that's out of the way. Let's see if getting this motherboard in will be any easier.
So who knew the best way to install a motherboard was to line up the I/O on the back of the motherboard to the I/O plate on the back of the computer case? Comment section's gonna have a field day.
How do you have so much trouble with this? You just stick it in there.
With the embarrassment of how long it took to fit the motherboard in the case over, it's time to get the board secured into the case.
So it turns out when you buy a lot of computer parts, you tend to get a lot of screws that come with those parts. And so I'm looking around for screws and I can't find the right screw I need to install the motherboard. So I decide, oh, I'll go look in the other room and see if there was any screws in those boxes we placed in there. And while I was away, my brother's curiosity got the best of him. Where'd you find it?
Right here, I'd get a flat blade. This one doesn't want to sit all the way down. I think it's too pointy.
Okay. Turns out I had the correct screws in front of me the whole time.
You and Andrew just not very good at connecting stuff, are you? Between cables and screws and stuff.
There's a lot here and a lot to miss and look over, Lucas, okay?
You just align it and stick it in. But that's kind of when I started jumping in more and helping them out. And that's when the process started speeding up a little bit.
I wonder if the elder Wright brother had to deal with an annoying younger brother when they built the first working plane.
With the right screws in hand, I went to work securing the motherboard to the case. With the screws screwed in, I started to reattach the back fan, which was easier said than done.
You want to come and look at this? See what I got?
Why you break things so easily?
I would say it's not my fault, but as much as it pained me to do it, I asked Lucas for help.
That's when I started jumping in and helping him because I could tell he was getting frustrated with some of those connections.
In this episode, we're gonna learn how to install fans.
If you're gonna work on computers, you should probably know the ways of the tools of the land.
So really the rest is just hooking this up here. Let's see, I guess we can go ahead and put in the hard drive. There's no way to screw that in. So far I've not been able to do anything right with this first time build, so why should the SSD be any different?
After a number of combinations, I finally decided where the drive needs to go. But as usual, making part A combined with part B is an issue.
Like there's no screw. Do you see a screw that I can like screw that into that?
There you go.
What'd you do?
Took it out.
How did you take them out?
They just pull right out.
Okay.
And find screw short. Here we go again with screws.
Yay, more screws. At this point, I should just call the video Lucas's first computer build, because he seems to know how to put this thing together without looking at the instructions once.
Once I figured out how the screws work with the drive, it was just a matter of getting the screws secured in and replacing the drive encasement. After the drive was installed, I focused my efforts on getting the rest of the cables plugged into the motherboard. For the most part, the cables seemed to connect just fine, until I got to the front USB hub, that is.
Please be the right way, because that's how you approach everything in life. Please work. Stay. Go in the plug, please. I mean, you can't line these up. They're too fine to line up. I don't get. That's, yeah, because I can't get it in. Because it won't.
The one you were trying to go for?
Yeah, I guess either one. At this point, just I can't get them in any of them.
The USB, that was hard. Because we go to plug it in from the case to the motherboard, and there's 2 different slots, and we go to plug it in, and I can't believe they would make the pins so small, but they're really tiny and fragile. And we actually had some pins bend on us, so we'd have to get in there and bend them back and wrestle with it. We finally got them in there.
Looks like you got it.
It had a bent pin on it, bent it back.
Okay, so that's in there though? Okay, good.
After a few words of encouragement from Lucas,
So quick to go to the manual. Man, how you're letting him nail down. So that manual really helped you any?
we tackled the rest of the cables.
Okay, so this is what all we've been trying to do is get all these cables plugged in here. Not 100% sure if we did it right, but we're going to go ahead and at least try it. We'll get the graphics card in here, maybe clean up these cables here, and hopefully have a computer that's, you know, power on and run, and that's kind of what we're hoping for. And then we'll just go over it, make sure that everything else is in there and running, and hopefully we got it set up as best we can, and we'll just go from there.
With all the cable work cleaned and the hard drive encasement screwed back in place, we turned our attention to the graphics card. While the concept of putting a graphics card into a computer is not a difficult one, we still decided to consult the instructions, just in case there was some detail we may overlook.
They've got a little cartoon.
Oh, goody. I wonder how this story ends.
All right, let's read the little cartoon here.
Lucky the Dragon Computer Workshop.
Alrighty.
How to install your graphics card. You need a remarkable graphics card if you want to win the game.
You just need a graphics card that works. It doesn't necessarily have to be remarkable, it just has to work.
What do I do if I don't know how to install the card? Let me teach you. First, throw away the instructions because you don't need those.
You made that up, didn't you?
I didn't make that up. It's just lying.
To install the graphics card, you need these system requirements. A monitor,
A monitor. In Windows 7 or later.
Phillips screwdriver, rubber gloves. Yeah, right.
Rubber gloves.
Don't need no gloves.
Doctor.
I'm a man, I don't need no gloves.
With the useless cartoon instructions set aside, I just decided to go ahead and shove the card in there. And that was pretty much it. We made sure everything was screwed in and set the case back up and reattached the side panel. We were good to go. Or so we thought.
Turns out there was another USB hub, and I didn't notice it until we had all the parts put in and the case set back up and ready to go.
We get this thing, we're starting to put it together, and there towards the end we realize, hey, here's another USB slot we can put in the back of it. And I was like, oh man, here we go again. We gotta hook up this other USB port, and the pins are gonna bend, and we're gonna be frustrated.
Now, could I have plugged the other USB hub connector into the motherboard? Sure. But Lucas, he's been behind that camera all day. He's just itching to get in there and do some more work. So, being the kind, mature brother that I am, I allow him to connect the other USB hub connector to the motherboard.
But we got it all worked out, and the case turned out really nice.
Okay, so it's at this part of the computer assembly process that looks like we've got everything in there, at least enough to get it on and running. So now it's moment of truth here. Go ahead and turn on the power in the back here. Alright, see what we got. It's powering up. Nothing shows up on the monitor. Didn't see that coming.
And by the time all this is over, we spent a good 8 hours putting this computer together. So we're at the end of the day, and we're like, all right, everything's in it. We're gonna boot it up before we close the case up. And we go to boot it up, doesn't do anything.
I mean, the computer turns on, lights are glowing, fans are whirling, but we're not getting an operating system. 22, 23, I wonder what that means. Where's the instruction booklet at? It's 23, whatever that number is. Let's find out. So I'm looking in the motherboard manual for like 15 minutes trying to figure out what this code 2223 thing is. I can't find it, and I'm at my wit's end. So at this point in the ball game, I'm gonna call it quits. But I'm gonna try one more time. just for the sake of this video. So I get the tower and I turn it back up on its regular side now, and I hit the power button. And lo and behold, it works. Okay, so we finally got the thing up and running, and from what I can figure out, the way to get it up and running is to actually turn the case up on its side, on its regular side here. We had it laid down flat on its side, and it would not turn on for some reason. It would turn on, it just wouldn't boot up into the computer. And we're like, what's going on? And I had to move around. We moved around some plugs and stuff, tried different things, and we couldn't find the error code that was on there. It kept reading some kind of low 20 number or something, but apparently that's, I guess that's not it. I guess it just doesn't want to be on its side. So we turned it back up, turned it back on, and now it's up and running. So yeah. Yeah. In retrospect, I think the 2223 code was just the temperature that was being read on the computer at the time in Celsius.
It was a long day, but in the end, not only did we come away with a working computer, but something more.
So what I took away from this experience was not only a new computer, but the experience I got from putting it together with my own hands. Anyone can go out and buy a computer and it automatically comes assembled and everything, and you just have to plug it in. But this was something unique. You know, we put it together. We put the individual components in there and basically gave it life.
There was a certain sense of, I don't really want to say pleasure, but a certain sense of enjoyment in seeing Windows being installed. I did it so much growing up, and I've always enjoyed, all right, you're getting a fresh operating system on this hard drive, just getting a fresh everything, and seeing Windows install like that kind of brought back some memories.
My thoughts about it at the end of the day, I was like, wow, Andrew and Jacob really don't know how to put a computer together. They were very amateur at it. When I looked back at it, I thought it really wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be, because a lot of it is just putting stuff together. Now, obviously, when it came to some of the stuff they were doing before they put the operating system on, that was kind of over my head what they were talking about. But when it comes to putting stuff together, it really wasn't all that bad.
Not only the computer building experience, but I also took away that just because you're not an expert in a certain field doesn't mean you're not useful in that field. I didn't realize how helpful my brother Lucas was going to be for this project, and it turns out he was the right person at the right time. So yeah, really the only thing left to do is, for now, go ahead, see if it's running, maybe run it a little while, see if it's going to continue running. I was kind of afraid about that whole CPU pin situation, but it seems to be up and running, so I'm not going to question it. It's up and running. When there's a problem, then we'll cross problem bridge when we get there. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and run it, just put in the drivers and everything we need, and then hopefully in the future I'll be able to add more stuff like an optical drive and just various components of stuff that I may use in the future. So thank you for watching.